we may be a little late to the party, but Fernandez's tactics are something that will never go out of style. I was really excited to get to watch him in the Club World Cup, and guess what? It wasn't available on a channel that was easy to access in America, so I was able to watch the highlights of the game, but it really did make me realize that I'd need to get working on this tactic, because it was requested by my lovely editor, Davey FM, a while ago. Now, he does have an awesome video coming out soon. He's going to be doing some amazing lower league saves, so to be sure to check that out on his YouTube. I believe it's happening. I can't remember exactly where off the top of my head. That's my bad. But he's got some awesome stuff coming out, so be sure to check out when that is happening, because it's going to be incredible and amazing, so do that. But he did request this from me a while ago, and it is about time I get to it. It was a little disappointing in terms of how it came out in the testing, but it is still an awesome tactic, and I really believe that this does truly match up to the way Diniz likes to play, and all these things like that. So if you guys are excited to see all my explanations on how I built this and what went into it, be sure to continue watching and check all of that out. Okay, so it's time to now talk about the tactic that we've made for Fernando Diniz. Now, I did say it didn't work too well in testing, but I still want to show you it, as it's now still something we can talk about, and we can go through a lot of the tactical setup and explain the analysis of it, since that's quite important as well, so you're understanding why I did those roles, certain instructions and things like that, and you can see what I was doing there. And I'd love if you guys want to do your own test, figure out what seems to work and those things like that. Now, I will obviously preface this by saying, I don't think his style of play does work well for a FM style content in terms of the game. I think FM is geared much towards the more positional style of football nowadays, where there's a lot more of it's a lot more of a chess match and much more designed around positional rotations and being in certain shapes, creating certain angles and passing lanes and things like that. Whereas Diniz is a lot more about relationism and creating much more fluid movements and fluid shapes from that. And that's why I think you'd really need to design a system that focuses on adjusting the tactic constantly within games, a lot more movement of freedom. And I just don't think it works really well with the current style of game. And that's okay. Not everything is going to be perfect. This is a video game. This is not a real world simulation. It's a very good simulation, but it's not the greatest thing in the world. And that's okay. Not everything works. I mean, obviously look at low blocks. They don't work at all in this game. And that really sucks. But, you know, it's you sometimes have to deal with that at times. But one of the first things you have to talk about when it comes to Diniz is relationism. This is a concept that I know not loads about, but I know a little. I've done some reading to make sure that we can have a good video here. But it's something that really is the opposite of current football. And if you watch the Fluminense versus Manchester City highlights from a few days ago, you can really see that. There's some incredible clips of Fluminense building out of the back and building through just a very rotational system of just moving around, just being in the same elements and areas. And they're like passing along their goal line at one point, and City are pressing them and they just can't get the ball off them. Now, they're not going that far forwards, but still, it's incredible from City, the impact that they're able to like press up against, and they just can't even catch it, which is quite crazy to see. But in essence, for Diniz, it's all about creating fluid structures that move around the pitch through individual movements. And these individual movements create space, pull players out of position, and create opportunities to create lots of small, short passes that create passing staircases. So passing staircases, which would be something like this. So this line here would be, say, a staircase, which is these three players all in a line here. Let's change this to green to match Fluminense a little better. So it'd be something a little more like this, like a staircase like this, where if the six has the ball, he can pass to this guy, or he can pass, this guy can leave it, and it can go all the way to the 10. But it creates a staircase where you're able to transition the ball through these three areas, normally through different lines of the pitch as well. So that's kind of what you can create. You even then create 1-2 opportunities where he gets the ball here, he plays it to the 8, then he moves on past the other guy and he gets it back. So that's kind of one of the big things that are created through this and these individual movements is a lot of give and goes and staircases. And one of the other things they do to help this is they really encourage making the pitch quite small. So a lot of the times when you watch Diniz play, his teams will play in areas, they'll play in like an area in essence, kind of like this, almost like this size. They'll play in an area around like this size here. So they'll play in kind of these like boxes. If you were to move, say, this box around the pitch, oh my god. If you were to move this box around the pitch, they would play in this box here, and say they're in this wide area here. You have all these players kind of tucked in around here. This guy, the opposite wingback, tends to hold width. You'll have, say, this guy pushed all the way up here, him over here, this guy in the middle over here. You'll have the 10 over here, and you'll have the 9 over here. Like, they'll just be creating different things. So they'll have, excuse me, they'll have a staircase, and this guy will be all the way tucked in over here as well. So sometimes the 9 will stay, but he'll tuck in even into these areas. You'll see the different angles for stuff. Just gotta get this line. Different ones. So you'll see like different angles, like that to 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 that, and something like that along those lines. But in essence, the ball can be here. It can move to this guy. Then it can move. The ball can move around like this, so it can move to boom, boom. You have your staircase. He leaves it. He moves into this space. He then leaves it and goes into here. This guy then moves into this space. This guy moves into this space. Pass to, oh my god. He passes to here. He passes to here. They can leave it here. He can make a run like this. So it's a lot of these movements and things that do that stuff. And it's a lot of these tight spaces and small areas that they really go into on the pitch, which is really crazy to see, but it's also really cool. And that's where you get a lot of these like small areas where they look to play in here. Now, one of the things that's interesting is the opposite wingback will kind of hold a little width at times, but generally, it is pretty much a congestion of players here. The center backs tend to be much more stationary. They tend to be the only ones with real positional sense, I'd say, and the 6 as well, somewhat of a positional sense. But otherwise, everyone else is quite fluid. You'll see the opposite-sided winger coming from all the way over here, all the way over here, to the opposite side at times as well, which is quite crazy. And they usually have a little bit of width from the wingback here, but a lot of times, if this guy has the ball, he won't pass here. He'll pass right back into this pressure, which is really interesting. So let's kind of have some basic stuff that goes into it. We'll get into a little more of how the team truly does set up right now as we talk about this. But normally the best way I'd say you could look at it is Diniz sets up in a 4-2-3-1. Obviously, this is quite a loose example of it. The key things to know with Diniz is that he has a recognized 10, he has 2 recognized wingers, and that he has as well a recognized 6. The rest, he also has a back 4. The rest is quite fluid. Now, he has players that do set up in those areas, but the movement of them is very unlike other players. It's a lot more freedom to these guys. So it really does change just constantly in game. Now, the 3 players that have a much more positional sense are these 3 right here. The center backs are quite defensive center backs. They're not really anything major or crazy in terms of the way they do things. They're a lot more of just basic center backs, just doing the job of guys recycling possession at times, mainly playing short passes back into the mix of players, mainly into the 6 or to the wing back that is with the rest of the team. Sometimes even the wing back will be pushed so high up that the center back will be out towards the touchline, with the other center back here being the 2 ones that recycling possession, almost having a 3 in the back line. And that will occur sometimes as well. But that's really the main goal of the center backs. I wouldn't call them ball-playing center backs, but they're much more of just ball recyclers. They get the ball, they play it right back into the group of pressure, and they let the more technical players deal with this. They're definitely more oriented also to being much better in terms of winning the ball and being aggressive, as Diniz tends to favor an aggressive 4-4-2 when it comes to defending. So then the other player is the 6, whose main role is to really be the ball carrier and the water carrier, I should say, not ball carrier. His job is to do lateral movements like this constantly. This is Andre, who's just an exceptional player, and I really suggest you take a look at him. He's amazing. He goes like this, laterally up and down, well, side to side, all the time, cleaning up attacks, getting the ball off these guys, passing into the middle, and then moving forwards once he can up the pitch, being a real creator and real technical player. That's mainly what his goal is, and he's really, really good at this. He's great at stopping attacks, getting them going and getting them again. And he has a lot of positional freedom in that sense, but he is quite tied to being that 6 that cleans up and then attacks from that area. His main domain usually is in this spot right here, quite right in front of the defense. This is usually where his job is this kind of area is all his to deal with, and he does an exceptional job at doing that. And that's kind of what his main position is. Now, when it comes to the rest of the team, there's another player that needs to be talked about a bit, and that is Ganso. Ganso is the 10 in this system. Now, you might remember him from his quite poor time at Sevilla, but he's been an exceptional player in the Brazilian game. He is someone that reminds me a lot of Mesut Ozil, that reminds me a lot of these kind of like... Thomas Müller also comes to mind for me. These guys that are so good at being selfless. They're amazing at giving and creating for other people. They roam around the pitch with this unrivaled positional sense and are able to create things by finding pockets of space, by passing here and there, movement and everything. They're just unreal at this, and it's quite impressive to see. And so one of the things that he does is that he has full freedom of movement. He is not tied it all down to being a 10. His role is to drift wherever he wants on the pitch and create 1-2s. He will drift all the way back here, play with Andre. He'll drift all the way to the outside and play with these guys here. And his job is just to help create and help find spaces by passing, by moving, and by keeping play going. He, in essence, is the job of connecting everything and keeping it ticking and keeping it moving around and continuing. He is the Andre. He is the Andre of the final third. His job is in these areas here to do all of that. This is where his domain is. He gets to move all around the pitch doing all that stuff. And he's exceptional at it. He's amazing. Finally, their striker when it comes to him, his job is quite important as well. He's a box crasher. His job is to stay on the last line, really push that line deeper and get into the box and always be a target in there. And he's really great at that. It's Herman Cano is the striker. He's fantastic at doing this. He sits on the back line, kind of finds pockets of space, and just is really up against it on that final line constantly. And it also helps because he's so deep, it gives more, the defenders drop deeper, giving more room for Ganso to dribble and move around in these areas here and do this. So that's kind of one of the key things. Now, finally, the other stuff when it comes to these players here, like the 8 as well as the 2 wingers, they have a lot of positional freedom. The wingers will drift all the way to the opposite side. They tuck in a lot more, and they just look to combine. They like to make a lot of these runs into these spaces here. So they'll usually, in the wide space, combine here and get into this opening here where they'll look to cross, where the opposite-sided winger, as well as Kano, are looking to get into these areas here for cutbacks and crosses. The team doesn't really particularly look to cross too high. It tends to be a lot more of the lower crosses where people will make dummy runs or will let it go to other players, and there's a lot more technical combination play in those spots. It's a lot less of the kind of clip it into the box. Now the the 8, the other player in this system here, looks to just go anywhere. Well, he will come forwards. He has a full license to get forwards and go wherever he needs. He generally will be found in the 2 wider channels, I would say, normally coming in this left central channel or right central channel, picking up spots in there based off where the team is attacking. If they're attacking in this space out here, he'll drift into kind of this space here. If they're attacking down this one out here, they'll attack into this one here. Now, if you've noticed, I don't talk about the team playing a lot through the middle, and that's because Diniz doesn't encourage his team to do this. He wants them to focus mainly on attacking down these wide areas, and I'll show you this here. Let's draw another box so we can show you what I'm talking about. So we have this box here. Obviously, this guy's going to offer us the width. He's going to be probably pushed up here. The winger's probably going to be a little wider. They're going to be all kind of tucked in. Kano's going to be up there. Ganso's probably going to have a spot here. He's probably going to be tucked in and something along these lines. Probably like this. Actually, it'll probably be more like that. But they're all kind of going to be around and offering stuff, right? Now, with this and all this shape here, they attack down these areas like this because if they were to do this in the middle, there's lots of space out wide here. And there's lots of space in there. But if they can do this, what happens is the opposition gets clustered all over here. They're all in here. So if they win the ball, say this guy wins the ball, right? If he wins the ball off this dude here, where's he going to go besides into tons of pressure? You then have to hit a long switch, which is difficult to do, because if you hit it into this area here, the wing back, which is covering this wide space, will look to press and close it down and stop so the rest of the team can get back. or you then have to go backwards here, which allows the rest of the team to shuttle over and get into the proper defensive positions. And that's the thing that works really well for this, is that the counter pressing is fantastic in this. There is nowhere to go. You cannot do anything against this. You are compressed into a tight-ass area where there's nowhere to go but into more pressure. And that's what's fantastic about this system. He also loves aggressive man-to-man defense. He wants the team to be hard-nosed, get to the men, aggressively press them when they can. Obviously, they're not going to be pressing from the front from a constant press there, but when it comes to these areas, they're going to be much more aggressive, pressing, getting man-to-man and doing so, stopping them from doing anything because there is so much space left around the pitch. They have to be super highly aggressive with it. Now, mainly what does happen, you will see, is that the team does defend. If they are defending deeper, it's going to be in a 4-4-2. So that normally is just going to be this shape like so. This is the more common defensive shape that they will pick up when they're not able to counter press like that. So Andre and the other center mid will pick up the 2 center mid roles. Ganso and Kana will pick up the two 9 positions, and the wingers will then drop in and be the wide players in the 4-4-2. And that's how they're namely going to defend. So they like to play, sorry, one sec. I just lost my place in my notes. Defend in a 4-4-2. Oh my god, have I lost my place? Here we go. So usually the shape, especially when the defend, is designed more and like a bit of a deeper line. I wouldn't say too high press. They will engage from the front and stuff like that, but they won't be, the back line isn't super, super deep, as they're more kind of basic. They're kind of more of a mid block defensively, and sometimes will press forward at times as well, but they're just mainly going to go man to man and do what they can. They're not going to be, I wouldn't say they're pressing like crazy like this, but they do tend to press once they get into these middle areas here. And they're always going to look to get them to go wide when they press, because they want to then win the ball back and create those wide structures again with that shape. And that's kind of what they're looking to do. It's definitely a tricky one, this tactic, but I do highly recommend using it if you are a very good team who has some good 10s and good 6s, as they're going to be really, really important. I also think a high technical ability is really key, with lots of good passing and off-the-ball movement being really, really essential. You want to look for players, especially ones that are much more selfless in the pass, especially the 10 looking to give Playmore a really clinical poacher, as well as a fantastic deep-lying playmaker for that 6 role. So that's kind of what I'd look for with this. I think it's a really interesting one. I couldn't get it to work, but I also just don't think the way that I'm trying to be a little too literal with it, and I don't think the game is liking that. So it's unfortunate it didn't work every way in all those ways, but it sometimes happens like that, and that just kind of goes and doesn't always work out in the best of ways. But you know what? That happens, and you can't always complain. So yeah, it's time to now just check out what I did for the tactic, how I put it together, and you guys can see what roles and shape I did for it. And hopefully you guys enjoy. So everyone, here is the Diniz tactic. Obviously this was the Fluminense test, which didn't go well at all. Here is the tactic itself. So it's a 4-2-3-1 on a custom style. We start with a sweeper keeper in goal with take more risks. That's obviously to encourage the ball to be played into these areas and not letting the keeper just clear it long and create issues for it. It's just designed to make sure that they play it short and that they are encouraged to play under pressure as well. Now, I did say that these players did drift wider, but I felt that if you did the complete wingback role on support, they would stay too far wide and wouldn't connect with play enough. So I felt the inverted wingback role would suit them better in this system. We have pass it shorter and get further forward, which encourages them to make these runs into these spaces here. And also we want to keep it short, as we don't want the defense to be kicking it long. We want them to keep it short and be more connected with play. Our 2 center backs here are just the classic center backs. We have pass it shorter for them, as we want them again to pass it shorter into these 2 players here. Now, the DM we have no instructions on. I feel this is a perfect role for this player. And if we look as well at Andre, we can see his best role is this position right here as a defensive midfielder on support, and I think it perfectly suits what we're looking for in that player. So there's no additional instructions there on support. Next is Segundo Volante on support, which is get further forward and move into channels. So he will move into these channels here, which we talked about this player getting into. Oops, my bad there. Finally, we in the 10, we have Ganso, who is advanced playmaker on support. I feel this role best suits it as he's on roam for your position as additional instruction. But Ganso is the one that makes things tick. He'll pick up all these positions, move all around, and help make the team tick over, being the playmaker, the main one in possession, looking to do lots with the ball and being that key figure. The striker is just the advanced forward on the basic settings here. I don't think anything additional is, again, we want a lot of freedom and we don't want to restrict these players with things. As you can even see, the very fluid team mentality. Team fluidity is incredibly fluid, so we just have them moving into channels, which we want to see. And then finally, we have the inverted winger on pass it shorter, roam from position, and sit narrower. We obviously want the players to pass much shorter and keep things connected. This one I want to sit narrower just because the DM role is going to be slightly deeper, and this guy is mainly going to be attacking more down the left, so we want him to help cover that space that will be vacated from that. And we want him to roam from position so that he'll roam all the way across the pitch over there. Same with this guy, he'll roam all the way over there as well, and we can get those roaming kind of players that we're looking for. Now, a positive mentality, as Diniz's teams do look to dominate possession and control the ball. I have said much shorter passing with a very narrow attacking width. We look to play out of defense. We are much more expressive in our freedom. We keep the ball low when we cross it. And we have the two players underlapping here, as I don't feel you'd see many underlaps with the system, and this would encourage the ball to be the players to make runs that are more in the narrow areas, running into kind of these spaces here, which I felt were a little more common with that being done. Also, on a slightly higher tempo, as Diniz's teams do like to take their time. You probably could even put it here, but I do feel they try to go a little bit quicker, so they do like to look to go forwards, but they don't dilly-dally on the ball. They look to get it out of their feet quick and play, but they also don't look to just kind of sit on the ball and wait, which is why I kind of feel this tempo suits it better. So I think down here is too low, but I think here is just, I don't know, it just feels a little too low for me. I feel they go a little quicker than just kind of basic tempo, so that's why I have it just on the slightly higher. In transition, I have the team looking to counter press as well as counter, as we know they will look to do that. Take short kicks and play to anyone in the back line, as it is no real concerns about ball playing as the back line. It is anyone in possession will be passed to. And then finally, out of possession, a higher defensive line with a higher line. They tend to be more in some of mid block shape, but I just felt this kind of suited it a little better, and they would kind of press higher. So I'll be trying to get that out of that. Obviously, prevent short goals of distribution, much more often press, and then they'll get stuck in, which would hopefully incorporate the much more aggressive 4-4-2 type of pressing they look to do. So that is my extremely fluid 4-4-2-3-1 Diniz tactic. I hope you guys did enjoy that. Obviously, the tests did not go well, but again, I think this does replicate his style quite well, and I really do think it quite perfectly fits to how he wants to play. So, I think it's time now to wrap things up, but if you are interested in the tactic, we do have the links in the description below, both for the Steam link as well as the MediaFire download. Thank you again for watching, everyone. I know this is a shorter one than normal, but after the really terrible testing that happened in this one, I really chalked it up to being impossible to work in this game. I know even there were other people that have gotten it to work, and they did show their videos and they did really well, but I think for me, the new update has made this tactic unusable. Granted, also, they made different variants to adjust to those scenarios, and I wanted to try to make one that was a little more plug and play in that sense, because obviously I'm someone that I don't mind having to change tactics constantly, but I think for the average player, it might be a little bit much of an ask, so it is unfortunate. And I did even test some of their tactics, such as RDF and Josh Daly's versions of Fernando Diniz's, and I was sacked on those as well. So I do just think this year, it seems, this year's newest update has really made that tactic quite impossible to work, and that is really unfortunate, and it kind of does suck. That's the case, you know. I mean, granted, it is later, it is not like all on the Diniz hype, but it took me some time to get around to it, as it was a request that kept kind of getting pushed back. So that's unfortunate, but you know what? It's a cool tactic, and I like seeing cool things like that. I know I'm going to try to do some more stuff along those lines with some more realistic ones. But if you guys are interested in trying it out at all, feel free to download it. and get some results. Maybe if you play it yourself, you'll have much more success adjusting between the wider and more central options, going more narrow and adjusting side to side as the game moves on. Maybe even setting up some match plans would be more successful as well. I would like to tinker with that in the future, but for just right now, we're just kind of doing the basic tactic, make it, test it, and see what happens. And though it did work for Brazil, it was not that successful otherwise, and that's kind of the unfortunate one there. So that's how it goes sometimes. Now, if you guys did enjoy this very short form tactic video, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you guys want to check out some other amazing tactics that actually were successful in our testing, be sure to check the playlist at the end of this video or the one linked in the description below, where you can find a boatload of many other amazing tactics to fix your fill of them. Once again, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys had a wonderful New Year's and are looking forward to an amazing 2024.